Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kahloot Podcast. I am the side guy. Today we sit down for an in-depth conversation that navigate through the trials and tribulations of life's most challenging moments. Our podcast is a tapestry of human resilience, a place where laughter and stories light up even the darkest of times. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest. David Chami. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, David.
Thank you so much for having me. Was that what do they call it? Zagruta?
Zagruta, yeah. David, we're coming here today. My buddy, friend of a friend, said you gotta meet David. David is a civil rights attorney, and he's got a firm, consumerattorneys.com. And right now he's blowing up. He's blowing up on TikTok. And I said, what are you talking about? And he sent me this TikTok of what's going on here in ASU in Arizona. And I said, I got to sit down. I got to sit down with David. And here we are today. So tell me first, if you want to introduce yourself and who you are, where you came from. Are you from this earth? Are you from the moon? Are you from the stars?
So where am I from is what
where
you're
you from?
Yeah, so that's...
You said Zagruta. So, yeah. I mean, not a lot of people know what a Zagruta is, my friend.
So I'm third generation, born and raised here in the States, but I am Lebanese.
Okay.
My dad is an immigrant. My grandfather on my mother's side was born in Hamtramck, Michigan, suburbs of Detroit. So I'm also born and raised in Dearborn, Michigan, which, in the Arab world, Dearborn is famous in the United States.
That's
as far
the capital.
As the capital
of Arabia.
Yeah, capital of Arabia in the U.S. So...
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Shout out to Michigan.
Yeah, so I've been here in Arizona for 17 years now. Went to law school out here.
Okay.
Brought my wife and kids out here. Okay. Had a family before I ever became a lawyer. And it was always I'm a post 9/11 go to law school kind of guy. Oh. So for me it was a second career, but one that was intended to be in the pursuit of justice. Although I will admit it didn't start out that way. You graduate in 2009, the middle of a financial crisis, and you take whatever job you can get.
Absolutely.
You got to feed the family.
You got to make it work.
That's right. Had to make it work. But, I was very fortunate to have opportunities to take cases that I believed in, even when I was a lowly associate doing bankruptcy work in the very beginning, because bankruptcy was what everybody was filing in 2009. But I really paved my own path. I was given opportunities to do that. And, the civil rights angle of the law was what really sort of drove me to go to law school and to become an attorney. So, as my career has flourished, the opportunities to take on more civil rights work that sort of is in the world of helping people from my community, and I don't just mean Muslims. I mean Arab Americans or other minorities, people who are disenfranchised. I joined the board of CAIR Arizona in 2014.
Okay.
Which also opened up opportunities, obviously, to be put in contact with people from the community here in Arizona who were being discriminated against. So usually in Arizona, if something happens to a Muslim brother or sister, they're calling CAIR.
Okay.
And unfortunately for CAIR, they've had, and I don't work for CAIR. I'm a volunteer board member, so I kind of advise. And unfortunately for CAIR, there's it's a small organization here in Arizona, although it is a growing organization. There's been definitely some changes, and things have improved for the organization just from a staffing perspective, but they haven't had a lawyer on staff often over the years. And so basically I would sometimes become the attorney, meaning a case would come in and it'd be a case where somebody needed help, but CAIR didn't have a staff attorney to take the case. And so
I see what you mean.
yeah, they'd look
you guys
over.
Would step in and then...
they'd look over to me and say, "Hey, David," and I got a colleague and a friend of mine, also a Muslim brother lawyer, Rais Muhammad, who you probably know, right?
Familiar with, yes.
Yeah, he's also a board member. So sometimes one or the other of us will try to step up and help out. But what's happening today is different than what I've ever seen as far as what American college kids are facing, what our community is facing because of, and what the people of Gaza are facing. To me, it's unprecedented. Probably the only thing that would be comparable would be what was happening to Iraq, to the people in Iraq in 2005, right? 2004, 2005. But still, completely different because of the history of the struggles of the Palestinian people, right? And what's been happening here in the States as far as the movement for self-determination for the Palestinian people, the movement on college campuses, the movement, the protests in the streets. This is bigger than it's ever been, and so
absolutely. And it's eye-opening. I feel like the world has woken up to a point where it's no longer hidden. It's no longer pushed aside. Even bought-out media outlets, they can no longer hide the truth because they end up losing credibility at this point. Now it's so obvious that it's a slaughter, it's a genocide. And, the last 70 years was easy to, navigate the propaganda, but now when you have these videos and these people and everything that's happening, and then you see the treatment of protesters, how freedom of speech is being challenged, and then you see the treatment of students. You happen to be dealing with the TikTok video that went viral of you explaining the legalities. Let's go through that. What happened? A professor basically he was anti-protesting? I don't know, you're protesting a protest and then he just said some terrible, horrible shit? Like what?
So first off, I was literally in Cabo on a vacation, and I started getting text messages. ASU police are arresting students at the protest.
Okay.
And of course, I just landed Friday, April 26th, and I was going with my wife and a friend and his wife, and we were gonna, have a little long weekend, coming back Monday.
Yeah.
And so, but my weekend turned into, fielding calls from parents. I'll tell you, 27 ASU students got arrested that day. 72 people altogether from the community, 27 of them students, were arrested for legit peaceful protests. They were outdoors on campus, after hours. There were no classes, no finals. Nobody was being disturbed or disrupted.
Was it like a small protest? Because I know they just cleared out the encampments. It's nothing like that. It's just a group. They just wanted to...
There may have been at times a couple hundred people on the old main lawn at the Tempe campus, and they put up tents. Now, what I would say is here in the United States, we have the First Amendment right to free speech and to peaceably assemble, and that means to gather and protest. Speech is not just words, okay? Under the Constitution, case law, Supreme Court, there is something called symbolic speech. So sometimes, an armband can be symbolic speech, right? Tents are symbolic speech, and people say, no, those were camping. They were camping. And I say, they are symbolic speech. They are protected, because what those students were doing and what those protesters were doing was saying, the people of Gaza have lost their homes. Their homes have been destroyed. Bombs that are paid for by our tax dollars, destroyed their homes, and these people, almost 2 million of them, are living in tents. And so these student protesters, and you want to call them camping and encampments, so you can call them what you want,
Yeah.
but those tents are symbolic of how the people in Palestine, the people in Gaza are living. They are living in tents. They don't have homes anymore.
100%.
And so when you come on to the lawn, and you, like the ASU police chief, brought his pocket knife and started slashing those tents.
I saw that.
What he was doing was a middle finger. The people of Gaza, what he was doing was a middle finger to the First Amendment. What he was doing was a middle finger to the Constitution. And so what ASU did, in my opinion, was decided very early on that they weren't going to allow protesters to, and I use air quotes here, camp out on their campus. That they weren't going to allow those protesters to exercise their First Amendment rights to peaceably assemble and to protest and to free speech, because they didn't want the drama. They didn't want the ongoing attention of protest. They wanted the protesters to show up, chant for a few minutes and go home. They claimed that they arrested these people because they were there past 11 p.m. The problem is they arrested 3 of those people at 9 a.m. So within 30 minutes of appearing on the lawn to protest, 2 of the 3 people arrested were students. They were arrested within 30 minutes. They were arrested for violating no student code of conduct. There was no trespassing, but they charged them with trespassing. I will tell you that none of them have been formally charged. There's
mugshots.
Yeah, there are mugshots and there's case numbers, but not a single one of them have been formally charged with any crime. This here, the ASU police got ahead of themselves. So today, all of those cases were dismissed, but they were dismissed without prejudice, which means the county they could bring the charges back. They can get their shit together for the most part and figure it out, and then re-bring the charges if they choose to.
Got it.
But your question was a little different, and I kind of diverted a little bit to talk about the protests and the students, because what ended up happening was, a few days later, a pro-Israeli group of people got together and they call it a march, a counter-protest, trying to understand, the basis for a counter-protest. Like, are you protesting for genocide? I mean, what is the counter-protest for? But nevertheless, they started, marching on University Drive in Tempe. And I do represent this young lady now, and she wants to be, she gave an interview today, but she used an alias. She wants to remain anonymous, but a hijabi girl who was not even part of the protest. She was just riding her bike to the grocery store. And she saw the counter-protesters. So she crossed over to be on the other side of the street to be safe. And then she saw this Udelman. I won't dignify him by calling him Dr. Udelman, which is what he likes to refer to himself as, and he does have a PhD, but he doesn't deserve that title in my opinion. He was there with a handful of other individuals. One of them is a known antagonizer, an IDF reservist who will go around the country and antagonize pro-Palestinian protesters. He's been doing it ever since October 7th. He's probably even before that, but for sure, since in the last 7 months, he's been making a name for himself by harassing people who are wearing kufiyas or people who are identifiable as Muslim because they're wearing hijab. But she saw them accosting another young woman who was by herself. And I mean, they were approaching her with a clear intent, had their phones out recording, and they had a clear intent to approach this young woman wearing a kufiya. So they knew she was pro-Palestinian. So my client, who's going by Layla right now as an alias because she's not comfortable releasing her identity. She's the subject of the viral video, right? She's the Muslim hijabi girl wearing the sunglasses that was being assaulted by Udelman. So she stops and just tries to help the young lady and says, hey, leave us alone, back off.
Yeah.
And they try to, just stay neutral, not escalate the situation. And eventually the video picks up. Another young lady sees these two men harassing these two women, one of them being my client who's a hijabi. So she comes and she turns her video on and she starts recording the interaction. And you can see Udelman, become very aggressive, right? He starts, coming at this young girl, flailing his arms into the air. He bumps her twice. His friend starts telling her, go back to Iran, go back to jihad.
I saw the jihad. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he continues, and she says to him, she puts her hands up. She says, hey, you're not respecting my religious boundaries. You're up, he's up in her. He's up in her grill. Yeah, he's up in her grill, and she's backing away, and he's following her. And then he says to her, and I'll quote it. He says, "You insult." I'll say the wrong words here, but he says, "You insult my humanity, bitch." And he keeps coming at her. She's backing away. She hits the backs into the palm tree that's on the road. She kind of bumps into that, which is, by the way, in Arizona, you commit an assault when you put somebody in imminent fear of a physical injury. You don't have to actually physically touch them. You don't have to punch them, hit them to assault them. If you place them in reasonable imminent fear of a physical injury.
So putting them in a corner.
Yeah, I mean, if you make them feel like you're going to injure them, right? So when you flail your arms up, if you put your fist up in the air like you're going to throw a punch, even if you never throw the punch, that's assault. So this guy did more than that, right? Mm. He actually did come at her. He was charging at her. Yeah. He bumped her on at least 2 different occasions, and then he backed her into a tree where she actually fell off the curb. I mean, she didn't fall, but she went off the sidewalk onto the street and had to go back around to get back on the sidewalk to avoid him. So as far as I'm concerned, he broke the law, right? He committed assault. And he wanted to intimidate her. I mean, that was his goal. So when I got my hands on that video, when I saw that video, I was infuriated. I was upset.
It's triggering.
I was emotional about it, right? And I got that video from an organizer, someone who's active in the community, who got it from someone else, right? They said, hey, they didn't know the young lady, right? They didn't know who she was. We got to help, we got to do something about this. And so, of course, that organizer is not a civil rights organizer. And so she was put in contact with me because I'm on the board of CAIR and I'm also a civil rights attorney. And she said, this young lady doesn't want to be identified, but I think she potentially might need some help, and this isn't my area. Can you help her? So I connected with her and I got her permission. I said, do you mind if I use this clip? I'm going to shorten it and I'm going to make a video. By the way, prior to this, I'd probably posted 6 or 7 things ever
on TikTok.
I had like 6 videos, for my firm. It's a couple things about Gaza because I had really just started deciding to use my platform to speak out Again, my platform is small. I had 190 followers. Just so we're clear, I had 190 followers on TikTok. 150 of them were my cousins, right? Family. And yeah, that's exactly right. So my it's not like I was gonna get this message out to tens of thousands of people. At least that's not. That's what I thought. Yeah. And when I put the video out, within minutes, it went
that quick.
It went crazy. Like, I wasn't expecting it. I got home from dinner. I got home from work, actually. I posted it. I had dinner, and I looked at my phone, and it was like thousands and thousands of views and, likes and comments. And I was like, oh, crap. And so I reached out to the young lady, and I said, hey, there's like 50,000 views of this. After a couple hours, there's like 50,000 views. Yeah. And I said, I think this is catching like traction. Like, people are going to see this. Maybe the university will take steps, right?
Yeah.
To do something about this. Before I went to bed, it was at 150,000. When I woke up, it was over 1 million. It was almost 1 million. And before midday, it was at like 1.5 million views.
That's insane.
And I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was that day or that evening that ASU announced that they fired him from, ever teaching at the university, and that he was permanently banned from campus, meaning he can't come onto campus. Which, look, great. The video of this young lady being assaulted by Udelman was already, when I posted it, the full video had already gone viral on its own.
So elsewhere, yeah.
It had gone out viral it was viral on its own without any feedback from a lawyer. It was just like the 1 minute video clip.
Yeah.
And so he was clearly identifiable. You could tell who he was. ASU didn't do anything about it until I came out and I said, you need to fire this guy. He should not be around our children, right? He should not be around our students. Now, what I found out afterwards is he was already not coming back. He wasn't scheduled to teach at ASU.
Oh, this is he was on his way out.
He was on his way out. So, you know what? They banned him. He can't ever come back. Great. He's already got a job at University of Texas.
Oh.
He's already going to be teaching at U of T, at UT. So what I will say is that I am now, and there are people in our community who will say, look, don't work with law enforcement. They're not our friends. They're not our allies. But what I will say, if you're unwilling to work within the system that you live in, then you put yourself at a severe disadvantage, because we have 72 people from our community who now have potentially will have criminal records because of their protesting, right? And those criminal records will affect you. Even if it's just inconvenience you when you do a background check to get a job, right? Or trying to get to TSA pre-check approval or whatever.
Something, yeah.
Yeah. So
you have a record now.
So yeah, and fortunately they don't have a record yet, and those charges have been at least temporarily dropped. We'll see what happens. But what this guy did is far more serious than what those protesters did was exercise their First Amendment rights, their constitutional rights, right? They did what I would consider to be a civic duty, right? To actually honor our Constitution, to honor the laws of this country by exercising their right to free speech. What this guy did was abuse. It was assault. It was a crime. And I view that conduct as being reprehensible, but also, okay, there's a viral video of you doing this. You look really bad. But he has a job teaching kids ethics at the University of Texas. That's the So I look at it and I had to talk to this young lady and say, look, if you don't complain, if you're not willing to talk to the police, which I understand the apprehension. I say this, there are some police officers that I know and I respect, but as an institution, I think that the law enforcement in this country is a flawed institution. I think it's severely flawed. I think there's systemic racism I think there's racial profiling, religious profiling. I think it's the way the way policing is done in this country is seriously problematic, right? I mean, I think the way minorities, religious and ethnic minorities and racial minorities are treated is biased, and the system is not fair to them. You know, what a similar crimes, committed by white people aren't punished the same. The arrests aren't the same. So I understand all of that. And while I understand all of that, I also understand that I live in the country and this is the way policing is done. And that doesn't mean we don't work for change, but in the meantime, I'm going to take advantage of my law degree and my knowledge of the law to pressure law enforcement to apply those same principles to Udelman.
Absolutely.
Because if it was one of us doing that to a Jewish woman, and I say that while also acknowledging that there were Jewish people protesting with the Palestinians on the 26th, right? This is not a religious issue. But the cry of anti-Semitism would be blaring, right?
Absolutely.
And if a Muslim man was doing that to a Jewish woman, or even a Jewish man,
frontline news, and headlines,
and we would be arrested for it. And you know what? We would deserve it. If it was true. If what Udelman did to this young woman was done by a Muslim man to a Jewish woman, the Muslim man would deserve arrest. He would deserve charges, because that conduct is unacceptable. But if we're unwilling to work with police, then guess what? He's not going to get charged, and he's going to go on teaching, and this is the problem, right? Professors have influence over the minds of those that they teach, and I'm not comfortable having someone like that man teaching young people.
And you're paying for it. That's
right. And so I will also say, and I don't know if you want to get into this at all or not, but a lot of people were coming into my messages, into my comments, saying,
sliding in the DMs.
Yeah, they come into the comments.
What are they saying?
Coming in saying, you're part of the problem, right? You're defending terrorists, and we can ignore the fact that most of them are idiots, right?
Absolutely.
Like, first of all,
and many of them are bots, by the way. So
yeah.
I know the viral videos. You got to filter them. If you run analytics, you'll find many of them are bots.
That's right. So, but when you look at the more, I think, thoughtful criticisms, the number one complaint was, hey, these kids are, they don't know what they're doing. They're uninformed. And what do the schools have to do? What do the universities have to do with what Israel's doing, right?
Yeah.
And I'd say that's a legitimate question if you're uninformed, right? The schools, these major universities like ASU, have multi-billion-dollar endowments. These endowments are invested in companies. And the school's endowment grows, right, based on its investments. And there's something, I think, morally bankrupt about a university that's willing to profit off of war. And so when your endowment is invested in companies that are making tanks and fighter jets and missiles and bombs, drones that are being used to commit genocide. Forget Gaza for a moment. This shit's happening all over the world, okay? In the Congo, it's happening. In Rwanda, it's happened all over the world. Rwanda, it's been happening in various parts of the world. Wherever there are brown people, okay, there are weapons being used to kill them.
Yeah.
So.
And resources being extracted.
Yeah,
somehow.
Exactly. So yeah, and talk about the Caterpillars of the world and the Raytheons of the world, and these companies are. I mean, you think about it. How does Raytheon stock go up? Well, they have to be selling weapons. And who's buying weapons continually? Those countries that are at war.
Has to be a conflict. Yeah.
You have to have a conflict. You have to. I need. If I'm going to buy 1,000 precision missiles, it's because I just used 1,000.
Absolutely.
Right. And so they are incentivized to keep these wars going. And I know it sounds like people think, well, who would do that, right? Who would intentionally allow tens of thousands of innocent people to be killed for money? It's been happening since we were, since long before, our lives, long before, the invent of the United States, right? Long before, right? The Vikings were pillaging countries, right? I mean, this isn't a new idea. People kill for money, and they've been doing it for centuries and centuries. So,
Aborigines, you can go all the way back as that.
Yeah. So these students are protesting their university's complicity in what I think is now undisputable. I mean, I would have called it a genocide on October 20th, but I don't think anyone can credibly, with a straight face, say it's not in 2024, for sure.
I want to ask you two questions, and the first one is, and it's talking about universities. What responsibilities do you think these universities across the United States, what responsibilities do they have ensuring a safe and respectful environment for their students?
So,
in your opinion,
yeah,
you might not be an expert at.
No, I mean, I have opinions. I can tell you that safe environment for who, right? For the protesters or for the students? Because a lot of times they're the same, right? The students are the protesters, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So there is a responsibility to provide a safe school environment for the students that attend that school. But there's a Supreme Court case and a saying, that, and I'll probably butcher the quote a little bit, but nowhere, the nowhere is the right to protest more important than in the community of American schools. So that's a case called Tinker, and it was following protests during the Vietnam War, right? Supreme Court recognized in that case that, look, this is where students learn to be American, man. I mean, there's nothing more American than speech and protest, right?
Absolutely.
So, but it's crazy that even then, the police were cracking down on the protesters.
Absolutely.
Like there's a hypocritical sort of dichotomy of the way this country works. So like we always believe in free speech and Boston Tea Party and the right to protest, no taxation without representation. But damn you, if I don't agree with what you're saying, I want you to lose that right. They don't want the protesters to protest unless they're protesting something they agree with, and it's just the mistakes that we make, and it's the lessons that we don't learn from history, right? I mean, what is the saying, that it's the lessons that we don't learn that we're doomed to regret? And I know I'm butchering it again, but it's
no. I mean, it makes sense. Civil rights question, or not really? Well, maybe you tell me. How do you navigate the line between free speech and harmful speech in an academic setting?
Yeah, so look, the Arizona legislature has been working really hard to pass, Republicans in the Arizona legislature have been working really hard to pass sort of this open spaces, public, every space on a college campus is an open forum. They wanted to really limit the university's ability to control speech. I mean, this is like a Republican legislature. Like, we want free speech everywhere on campus.
It's very ironic.
Yeah, ironic, because they wanted like Turning Point USA to be able to come speak. They really weren't thinking of, pro-Palestine when they were trying to pass that legislation.
To everything, remember?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. But look, I mean, there is a limit on your ability to say what you want to say, and it's not necessarily about harmful speech, because who gets to decide what's harmful speech, right? I think people could say a lot of the things that Turning Point USA or the KKK are saying is harmful speech, but we would also say they have a right to say it. Yeah. The at least from a legal standpoint, the question is, are you causing a substantial disruption to the learning environment? So this is about speech on campus in school. If you're not substantially disrupting the learning environment, and I said substantial.
I mean, every university has their measurements.
That's right, but I mean, there's an objective there's an objective standard here, right? Is there substantial disruption to the learning environment? I can tell you, at least with the ASU kids, 11 p.m. on a Friday night, who was learning and what were they learning?
Night school, man. Come on. What about night school?
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you there's plenty of learning going on. And ASU Friday night, I can tell you what they were learning. They were learning, how much beer they could tolerate. So
I see what you mean. You're right. The definition changes, and the environment changes with school, the preferences, but how it's defined matters, and they need to have that definition clear, I think, from the outside looking in. David, this has been wonderful. Thank you for your time today. Anything else you want to add for our viewers, for our listeners?
I would just say that if you know someone, if you are someone who is a student at any of the Arizona public universities, colleges, community colleges, and you're facing, and you face discrimination. Northern Arizona, U of A, kids everywhere in this state have been targeted and arrested. There is help. You can reach out to me, even if I don't personally have capacity. There's a team of lawyers. There's some good people in our community that are helping me, by the way. I've been getting, maybe more attention than some of the others, but there's some really good lawyers in our community who are all hands on deck, pitching in. Zaid Al-Sayed, who's a Palestinian brother, a friend of mine, who's, was at those criminal court cases today, a few other lawyers, non-Muslim lawyers as well, helping out. So
that's awesome. And if they want to reach out to your team, consumerattorneys.com is where they need to go to get the best legal services in Arizona. Yeah, they reach out. They can reach out directly through me to me through the firm. Yep. Perfect. Awesome. Well, hey man, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it, man.